Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell sat alone at the corner table of Murphy's bar, nursing a ginger ale and watching the rain streak down the windows. After 15 years in the Navy, most of it spent leading some of the military's toughest operations, she'd learned to appreciate quiet moments like these. The bar was half full on this Tuesday evening in Virginia Beach. Most of the patrons were military folks from the nearby base, unwinding after a long day. Sarah had changed out of her uniform before coming here, wearing jeans and a simple blue sweater. She valued her privacy when she was off duty. She'd come to Murphy's to meet an old friend, but he'd texted 20 minutes ago saying he was running late. Sarah didn't mind. The solitude gave her time to think about the mission briefing she'd have to give tomorrow morning. Her SEAL task force would be shipping out in 2 weeks, and there was still so much to prepare. At the bar, 4 men in their late 20s were getting louder with each round of drinks. Sarah had noticed them when she walked in. They wore civilian clothes, but she could spot military bearing from a mile away. Young, cocky, probably fresh from basic underwater demolition training. She'd seen 1,000 just like them over the years. "Another round," one of them shouted, slapping the bar top. He had close-cropped blonde hair and the kind of swagger that came from youth and inexperience. "We're celebrating, boys. We got our orders today. We're finally getting assigned to a real team." His buddies cheered and clinked their beer bottles together. Sarah smiled to herself. She remembered that feeling, the excitement of a first real assignment, the pride, the nervousness hidden beneath bravado. These young men had no idea what lay ahead of them, but they'd learn. They always did. Her phone buzzed. Another text from her friend. "So sorry, Sarah, emergency came up. Can we reschedule?" She sighed and typed back a quick reply. No problem. She'd finish her drink and head home to her apartment, maybe call her sister in Ohio, get to bed early. As Sarah stood to leave, she accidentally bumped the table. Her glass wobbled but didn't fall. Still, the small noise caught the attention of the 4 men at the bar. The blonde one turned around, his eyes landing on her. A slow grin spread across his face. "Well, well," he said, his voice carrying across the bar. "What do we have here?" Sarah grabbed her jacket, ignoring him. She dealt with drunk young sailors before. The best strategy was always to simply leave. But as she walked toward the door, the blonde man stepped into her path. His friends laughed behind him. "Leaving so soon, sweetheart?" he asked. His breath smelled like beer and overconfidence. "A pretty lady like you shouldn't be drinking alone. Why don't you join us? We're Navy SEALs, well, almost SEALs. We could show you a good time." Sarah looked him straight in the eye. "Excuse me," she said quietly but firmly. "I need to get past." "Ooh, she's got attitude," one of his friends called out. "I like that." The blonde man didn't move. "Come on, don't be like that. We're just being friendly. What's your name?" "Not interested," Sarah said. "Please move." "Playing hard to get, huh?" He turned to his buddies. "What do you think, boys? Should we let this little lady go, or should we convince her to stay?" His friends whooped and hollered. The bartender, an older man with gray hair, was starting to look concerned, but seemed unsure whether to intervene. Sarah felt her jaw tighten. She'd faced down enemy combatants in 3 different countries. She'd led rescue missions in the most dangerous places on Earth. She'd earned every single commendation on her service record through blood, sweat, and tears. And now she was being harassed by 4 drunk kids who hadn't even completed their first deployment. "I'm going to say this one more time," Sarah said, her voice low and controlled. "Move out of my way." The blonde man laughed and looked back at his friends. "Did you hear that? She thinks she can give me orders. That's cute. Really cute." "Maybe she's military too," one of his friends suggested. "What are you, honey? A nurse, paper pusher. Bet you work in admin." "Get lost, sweetheart," the blonde man said, his grin turning mean. "The grown-ups are talking here. Why don't you run along and let the real warriors have their evening?" His friends erupted in laughter, slapping each other on the back. Sarah stood perfectly still. A part of her, the professional part, told her to walk away, to go around him, to let it go. These men were idiots, yes, but they were drunk idiots, and engaging with them would accomplish nothing. But another part of her, the part that had fought for respect in a male-dominated field for 15 years, the part that was tired of being underestimated, that part wanted to teach them a lesson they wouldn't forget. She took a slow breath and made her decision. "You're right," she said calmly. "I should go. Enjoy your evening, gentlemen." The blonde man smirked, satisfied with his victory, and stepped aside with an exaggerated bow. Sarah walked past him and out the door into the rain. Behind her, she could hear them laughing and congratulating themselves. She stood under the awning for a moment, rain drumming on the canvas above her head, and pulled out her phone. She scrolled through her contacts until she found the one she needed. Tomorrow morning's briefing was going to be very interesting. Sarah arrived at the Naval Special Warfare Command building at 0600 hours sharp, the same as every morning. The sun was just beginning to rise over Virginia Beach, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She carried her coffee in one hand and her briefcase in the other, nodding to the Marine standing guard at the entrance. "Good morning, ma'am," he said, snapping a crisp salute. "Good morning, Corporal," she replied, returning the salute before heading inside. Her office was on the 3rd floor, a modest space with a desk, filing cabinets, and walls covered in maps and photographs from various operations. On one wall hung her commission certificate and several commendations, including a Bronze Star and a Navy Cross. On another was a photograph of her graduating class from the Naval Academy. She was one of only 12 women in a class of over 1,000. Sarah set down her coffee and opened her laptop. She had 2 hours before the briefing, and she planned to use every minute of it. At 7:30, her phone rang. It was Master Chief Hernandez, her senior enlisted advisor and right-hand man for the past 6 years. "Morning, Commander," he said. "I've got the roster for today's briefing ready to go. 12 new team members reporting for duty." "Perfect," Sarah said. "I'll see you in the conference room at 0800. "Roger that, ma'am. Oh, and Commander, I heard something interesting from the guys over at Bud S training yesterday." "What's that?" "Apparently, 4 hotshots have been bragging all week about getting assigned to an elite task force. Real cocky bunch, from what I hear. Ring any bells?" Sarah smiled. "It might." Hernandez chuckled. "This is going to be good. See you at 8, ma'am." Sarah spent the next 20 minutes reviewing the personnel files of the new arrivals. The 4 men from the bar were indeed among them. Petty Officer 2nd Class Derek Mason, the blonde one, along with Petty Officers Jake Rodriguez, Marcus Thompson, and Kyle Bennett. Their training records were impressive, she had to admit. High marks in combat diving, weapons proficiency, and tactical operations. But impressive training scores didn't mean anything if you couldn't respect your commanding officer. They were about to learn that lesson the hard way. At exactly 8 o'clock, Sarah walked into the conference room. Master Chief Hernandez was already there, standing at parade rest near the front. 12 young men sat in chairs arranged in 3 rows, all wearing their service khakis, all sitting up straight with nervous energy. Sarah recognized the 4 from the bar immediately. They sat together in the back row. Derek Mason's eyes widened slightly when he saw her, but he quickly looked away, probably assuming she worked in the building in some administrative capacity. "Attention on deck," Master Chief Hernandez barked. All 12 men jumped to their feet and stood at attention. Sarah walked to the front of the room and set her briefcase on the table. She took her time, letting the silence build. When she finally turned to face them, her expression was neutral and professional. "At ease," she said. "Please take your seats." The men sat down, still looking uncertain. "Good morning," Sarah continued. "Welcome to Task Force Trident. My name is Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell, and I am the commanding officer of this unit. For the next 18 months, I will be responsible for your training, your deployments, and quite possibly your lives." She watched as the realization slowly dawned on the 4 men in the back row. Derek Mason's face had gone pale. Jake Rodriguez was staring at her with his mouth slightly open. Marcus Thompson looked like he might be sick. Only Kyle Bennett seemed to be maintaining some composure, though his jaw was clenched tight. Task Force Trident is not a regular SEAL team, Sarah went on, packing slowly in front of the room. We are a specialized unit that handles the missions other teams can't or won't take. We go into the worst places on Earth and we get the job done. We've conducted operations in 17 countries over the past 5 years. We've rescued hostages, eliminated high-value targets, and gathered intelligence that has saved countless American lives. She paused and made eye contact with each man in the room. This is not going to be easy. The training is brutal. The missions are dangerous. The hours are long and the stress is constant. Some of you won't make it through the first month. That's fine. Not everyone is cut out for this kind of work. But for those who do make it, you'll be part of something extraordinary. You'll be part of a brotherhood and sisterhood that extends beyond rank, beyond branch, beyond anything you've experienced before. Master Chief Hernandez stepped forward. We've reviewed all of your training records and service jackets. You're here because you demonstrated exceptional skills and potential. But let me be clear, what got you here won't keep you here. You'll be evaluated every single day on your performance, your attitude, and your ability to work as part of a team. Sarah nodded. That last point is crucial. Teamwork. In Task Force Trident, there is no room for ego, no room for showboating, no room for disrespect. Every member of this team, from the newest petty officer to the commanding officer, deserves your professionalism and respect. Is that understood? Yes, ma'am, the men shouted in unison. All except the 4 in the back row, whose response came a beat late and noticeably quieter. Sarah walked down the aisle between the chairs, her hands clasped behind her back. She stopped directly in front of Derek Mason. Petty Officer Mason, she said. He swallowed hard. Yes, ma'am. Do you have any questions about what I just said? No, ma'am. Are you certain? Because you look confused. A few of the other men glanced back, sensing something was happening but not understanding what. Derek's face flushed red. No confusion, ma'am. Crystal clear. Good, Sarah said. She moved on to Jake Rodriguez. Petty Officer Rodriguez, how are you feeling this morning? Fine, ma'am, he managed to say. Glad to hear it. I trust you gentlemen had a pleasant evening yesterday. The 4 of them sat frozen, none of them willing to answer. Sarah returned to the front of the room. Here's what's going to happen, she said. You have exactly 10 minutes to get into your PT gear and meet me on the obstacle course. Master Chief Hernandez will show you where to change. We're going to start your first day with a little physical training. After that, we'll move on to classroom instruction, followed by a team-building exercise. Dismissed. The men stood and filed out quickly. The 4 from the bar moved like they were walking to their own execution. The obstacle course at Naval Special Warfare Command was designed to break men down and build them back up. 2 miles of mud, walls, ropes, and water hazards that had defeated countless trainees over the years. Sarah had run this course hundreds of times, and she knew every inch of it. The 12 new team members stood in formation at the starting line, breathing hard from the 5-mile run they just completed as a warm-up. It was only 9 in the morning, but the Virginia sun was already beating down, and sweat poured down their faces. Sarah stood before them in her own PT gear, navy blue shorts, and a gray t-shirt, looking as fresh as if she'd just woken up from a nap. Master Chief Hernandez stood beside her with a clipboard and a stopwatch. The record for this course is 18 minutes and 42 seconds, Sarah said. I said it 6 years ago and it still stands. You will run this course as a team. You will not leave anyone behind. You will help each other over every obstacle. If one person fails, you all fail. If one person quits, you all start over. Is that clear? Yes, ma'am, they shouted. I can't hear you. Yes, ma'am. Outstanding. Master Chief, start the clock when they cross the line. Sarah stepped aside, and the 12 men took off running. For the next 45 minutes, Sarah watched as they struggled through mud pits, climbed 30-foot walls, crawled under barbed wire, and hauled themselves across rope bridges. She paid particular attention to the 4 men from the bar. To their credit, they were working hard. Derek Mason was actually one of the stronger runners, and he helped pull Marcus Thompson over the tallest wall when Marcus couldn't get a good grip. Jake Rodriguez was struggling with the rope climb but refused to quit, even when his hands were bleeding. Kyle Bennett seemed to be the natural leader of their group, constantly encouraging the others. But Sarah also noticed something else. The four of them were isolating themselves from the rest of the team. They worked together but stayed separate from the other 8 men, creating a division that could become a serious problem. When they finally crossed the finish line, all 12 collapsed on the ground, gasping for air. The time was 38 minutes, not terrible for a first run, but nowhere near acceptable for an elite unit. "On your feet," Master Chief Hernandez barked. "You've got 2 minutes of rest, and then we're doing it again." A collective groan went up from the group. They ran the course 4 more times that morning. By the 4th run, they'd gotten their time down to 29 minutes, and Sarah could see them finally starting to function as a real team. The artificial barrier between the 4 and the 8 was beginning to break down out of sheer necessity. At noon, Sarah called a halt. The men were barely able to stand. "Hit the showers," she said. "Be in classroom 3 at 1300 hours and drink water, lots of water." As the group staggered away, Sarah noticed Derek Mason hanging back. He approached her hesitantly, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else on Earth. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "may I have a word?" Sarah crossed her arms. "Make it quick, petty officer." He took a deep breath. "I want to apologize for last night. My behavior was completely out of line. I was drunk and I was stupid, and there's no excuse for the way I spoke to you. I'm sorry, ma'am." Sarah studied him for a long moment. The apology seemed genuine, and she could see real shame in his eyes. But she'd been fooled by pretty words before. "I appreciate the apology," she said. "But words are easy, petty officer Mason. Actions are what matter. You want to show me you're sorry? Be the best teammate you can be. Treat every person in this unit with respect, regardless of their rank or position. Help the guys who are struggling. Set an example. Can you do that?" "Yes, ma'am, absolutely." "Then we're done here. Go get cleaned up." Derek saluted and jogged off to catch up with the others. Master Chief Hernandez walked over, shaking his head with a slight smile. "You're going soft in your old age, Commander." Sarah laughed. "Don't worry, Master Chief. We've got 6 more weeks of training before our deployment. Plenty of time to see if he means it or if he's just trying to save his career. And if he doesn't mean it, then he'll be off this team before you can say, general discharge." That afternoon's classroom session covered mission planning and tactical analysis. Sarah presented a scenario from one of her previous deployments, a hostage rescue in Yemen that had gone sideways when intelligence reports turned out to be wrong. "We thought we were going into a building with 4 hostiles," she explained, clicking through slides that showed satellite imagery and floor plans. "We were prepared for a quick in and out, but when my team breached the door, we found ourselves facing 12 heavily armed fighters and a building wired with explosives." The 12 men sat forward in their seats, completely focused. "We had a choice to make in about 3 seconds," Sarah continued. "Abort the mission and risk the hostages being killed in retaliation, or push forward into a situation we weren't prepared for. What would you have done?" She called on different team members, letting them debate the options. Some argued for withdrawal and regrouping. Others insisted that abandoning the hostages wasn't an option. The discussion grew heated, with voices rising and fingers pointing. Sarah let it continue for several minutes before holding up her hand for silence. "Here's what we did," she said. "We split into 2 teams. Half created a diversion at the front of the building, while the other half found an alternate entry point through a roof access. We used the chaos to our advantage. The hostiles were so focused on the front assault that they never saw us coming from above. We extracted all 3 hostages with 0 friendly casualties. But we lost the element of surprise. We expended twice as much ammunition as planned, and one of my team members took a round in his vest that cracked 2 ribs." She looked around the room. "The lesson here isn't about tactics. You'll learn dozens of tactical approaches over the next few weeks. The lesson is about adaptation. No plan survives first contact with the enemy. Your ability to think on your feet, to make split-second decisions under pressure, and to trust your team, that's what will keep you alive. The weeks that followed were the hardest of the new team members' lives. Sarah pushed them relentlessly, running drills at all hours of the day and night. They practiced close-quarters combat, long-range marksmanship, underwater demolition, high-altitude parachute jumps, and hostage rescue scenarios. They studied foreign languages, cultural customs, and intelligence analysis. But more than the physical and mental training, Sarah focused on building them into a cohesive unit. She organized team-building exercises that forced them to rely on each other. She created scenarios where rank and experience didn't matter, only cooperation and trust. Slowly, gradually, the 12 men transformed from a collection of individuals into a real team. Durrock Mason, true to his word, became one of the hardest workers in the group. He was often the first to volunteer for the toughest assignments and the last to leave the training facility each day. Sarah watched him carefully, looking for signs that his reformation was an act, but as the weeks went by, she began to believe he was genuine. One evening, about 5 weeks into training, Sarah was working late in her office when she heard a knock on her door. "Come in," she called. Durrock entered, still in his training gear, looking exhausted but determined. "Ma'am, do you have a minute?" he asked. "What is it, petty officer?" He shifted his weight from foot to foot, clearly uncomfortable. "I wanted to ask your advice about something. It's personal." Sarah gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Sit down." Durrock sat and ran a hand through his short hair. "I've been thinking a lot about that night at the bar. Not just about what I said to you, but about why I said it. And I realized something. I was scared." "Scared of what?" "Of not being good enough," he admitted. "My whole life, I've worked to prove myself. I was the kid from the wrong side of the tracks who made it into the Naval Academy on a scholarship. I was the guy who barely passed some of the training courses but refused to quit. I joined the SEALs because I wanted to be part of something elite, something that would prove I belonged in the same room as everyone else." Sarah listened, without interrupting. "But when I saw you at that bar," Durrock continued, "this woman sitting alone, looking so calm and confident, something in me just snapped. I think part of me was threatened by that, by the idea that someone could be strong without having to prove it to everyone around them. So I acted like a jerk to make myself feel bigger, to make my friends laugh, to prove I was in control." He looked up at her. "I'm telling you this because I don't want to be that person anymore. I want to be the kind of soldier, the kind of man who doesn't need to tear other people down to feel important. But I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to change." Sarah leaned back in her chair, considering her words carefully. "Can I tell you a story, Durrock?" "Of course, ma'am." "When I was at the Naval Academy, I had a roommate named Jennifer Chun. Brilliant woman, top of our class, could outrun and outshoot almost anyone. But some of the male cadets couldn't handle that. They'd make comments, play pranks, try to sabotage her work. One day, after a particularly bad incident, I found her crying in our room. She said she wanted to quit." Sarah paused, remembering. "I asked her why she joined the Navy in the first place. She said it was because her grandfather had been a Navy pilot in World War II, and he'd told her stories about bravery and honor and service. She wanted to live up to that legacy. So I told her, don't let a bunch of insecure boys steal your grandfather's legacy from you. Their weakness is not your problem." Durrock nodded slowly. "Did she stay?" "She did. She graduated second in our class and went on to become one of the Navy's first female fighter pilots. Last I heard, she's a captain on an aircraft carrier." "That's an amazing story, ma'am." "The point is," Sarah said, "you asked me how to change. The answer is, you already are changing. The fact that you're sitting here, having this conversation, being honest about your fears and failures, that's growth. Real strength isn't about being the toughest or the loudest. It's about being honest with yourself, admitting when you're wrong, and having the courage to be better tomorrow than you were today." Durrock was quiet for a moment. "Thank you, ma'am. That helps. There's one more thing, though." "What's that?" "The other guys, Jake, Muckas, and Kulla, they're still struggling with all this, with you being our co. They don't talk about it openly, but I can tell. They're having trouble respecting the chain of command because you're a woman. I've tried to talk to them, but they just shut me down." Sarah had suspected as much. She'd noticed the subtle signs, the delayed responses to her orders, the eye-rolling when they thought she wasn't looking, the way they only really seemed to listen when Master Chief Hernandez repeated her instructions. "I appreciate you telling me this," she said, "but those three are going to have to figure it out on their own. I can't force someone to respect me. I can only do my job to the best of my ability and let my record speak for itself. If they can't get past their prejudices, they won't make it through the next phase of training anyway." "What's the next phase?" Daruk asked. Sarah smiled. "You'll find out tomorrow." The next morning, Sarah gathered all 12 team members in the briefing room. "Gentlemen," she said, "your basic training is complete. You've proven you have the physical skills and mental toughness to be here. Now it's time to see if you have what it takes to survive a real mission." She clicked a button, and a map of Central America appeared on the screen behind her. 2 weeks from now, we're deploying to Colombia. Our mission is to assist local forces in locating and capturing a high-value target, a cartel leader responsible for trafficking both drugs and human beings into the United States. This will be a live operation with real dangers and real consequences. You will be armed with live ammunition. You will face actual hostile forces. And if something goes wrong, people can get hurt or killed. The room was dead silent. "Before we go," Sarah continued, "each of you will undergo a final evaluation. You'll be tested on every skill you've learned over the past 6 weeks. Only those who pass will deploy with the team. Those who don't will be reassigned. Master Chief Hernandez has your testing schedules. Study hard, train hard, and be ready." Dismissed. Part 5. The final evaluations took 3 days. Each team member was pushed to their absolute limit, running combat scenarios, solving tactical problems, demonstrating their proficiency with every weapon in the arsenal. Sarah and Master Chief Hernandez watched it all, taking notes and scoring each performance. When it was over, 11 of the 12 had passed. Mucka's Thompson had failed the close-quarters combat scenario, freezing up when confronted by multiple targets in a confined space. It was a critical weakness that could get people killed in the field. Sarah called him into her office to deliver the news. "I'm sorry, Petty Officer Thompson," she said gently. "You have excellent skills in many areas, but your performance in the CQB evaluation shows you're not ready for this level of work. You're being reassigned to SEAL Team 5, where you'll have more time to develop your skills." Mukaza's face crumpled. "Ma'am, please, give me another chance. I can do better. I had a bad day." "This wasn't about having a bad day," Sarah said. "When you hesitated in that room, you got yourself and 2 of your teammates killed in the simulation. In a real scenario, those would be actual deaths. I can't send someone into combat who freezes under pressure." "But the decision is final, Petty Officer. You'll receive your new orders tomorrow. You're dismissed." Mucka stood, saluted stiffly, and left. Sarah felt for him. She really did. But she couldn't compromise the team's safety out of sympathy. The remaining 11 team members deployed to Colombia as scheduled. They spent 2 weeks in the jungle, working alongside Colombian special forces to track the cartel leader. It was hot, miserable work, with long hours of surveillance followed by short bursts of intense action. On the 13th day, they got a break. Intelligence indicated the target would be at a remote compound for a meeting with his lieutenants. It was the opportunity they'd been waiting for. Sarah gathered her team in a makeshift command post, really just a tent with a folding table and some camp chairs. "We go in at 0300, she said, pointing to a satellite image of the compound. 2 teams. Alpha team, that's Derek, Jake, Kyle, Rodriguez, Bennett, and Chen, you'll breach from the north. Bravo team goes in from the south. Our Colombian partners will establish a perimeter to catch anyone who tries to run. Questions?" "What's the rules of engagement, ma'am?" Derek asked. "We want the target alive if possible, but our priority is the safety of this team and our allies. If you or your teammates are in danger, you are authorized to use lethal force. Clear." Yes, ma'am. At 0300, both teams moved into position. Sarah led Bravo Team herself, communicating with Alpha through her headset. The night was dark, with heavy clouds blocking the moon. Perfect conditions for a raid. Alpha Team in position. Derek's voice crackled in her ear. Bravo Team in position, Sarah confirmed. Stand by for my mark. 3, 2, 1, execute. Both teams breached simultaneously. Flashbangs lit up the night, and the sound of shouting filled the air. Sarah's team moved through the south wing of the compound with practiced efficiency, clearing room after room. Then she heard Derek's voice, urgent and stressed. Contact, multiple hostiles. We need backup at the north entrance. Sarah made a split-second decision. Bravo Team, proceed to the north entrance. Double time. They sprinted through the compound. As Sarah rounded a corner, she saw Alpha Team pinned down by gunfire from an elevated position. Derek and Jake were returning fire while Kyle tried to drag an injured team member to cover. Sarah assessed the situation in an instant. The hostile shooter had a perfect angle on her team, and they couldn't advance or retreat without being cut down. She signaled to her team, then broke from cover and ran across the open courtyard. Bullets kicked up dust at her feet, but she kept moving, using her momentum to slide behind a low wall that gave her a different angle on the shooter. From her new position, she could see him clearly, a man with an assault rifle on a second-story balcony. She aimed carefully and fired 3 rounds. The shooter dropped. Alpha Team advance, she called out. Derek's team surged forward, and within minutes, they'd secured the compound. The cartel leader was captured alive, along with 3 of his lieutenants. The injured team member, a young petty officer named Chen, had taken a round in the leg but would make a full recovery. As Colombian forces loaded the prisoners into trucks, Derek approached Sarah. "Ma'am," he said, "that was incredible. The way you drew his fire and then took that shot, I've never seen anything like it." Sarah shrugged. "Just doing my job, petty officer." "No, ma'am, it was more than that. You risked your life to save us. You didn't have to do that. You could have ordered someone else to take that position." "That's not how I lead," Sarah said simply. "I don't ask my people to do anything I wouldn't do myself. That's what being a commander means." Jake and Kyle had walked over during this conversation. They both looked shaken but also different somehow, like they were seeing Sarah clearly for the first time. "Permission to speak freely, ma'am?" Jake asked. "Granted." "I owe you an apology. Actually, we all do." He glanced at Kyle, who nodded. "We've been resistant to having a female co. We didn't think you could handle it. We didn't think you'd be tough enough or smart enough or brave enough. We were wrong about all of it. What you did tonight, you're the reason we're all going home alive, and we're sorry we ever doubted you." Kyle stepped forward. "I know we've been difficult, making things harder than they needed to be. But after tonight, after seeing you in action, I want you to know we trust you, completely, and we're proud to serve under your command." Sarah felt a lump in her throat but kept her voice steady. "I appreciate that, gentlemen, and I want you to know something too. I never doubted you. Not for a second. From the moment you joined this team, I knew you had the potential to be great. You just needed time to figure out what really matters." "What's that, ma'am?" Derek asked. "Not where someone came from, or what they look like, or whether they fit your idea of what a leader should be. What matters is whether they'll stand beside you when everything goes to hell, whether they'll risk everything to bring you home safe, whether they'll sacrifice their own comfort and safety for the good of the mission and the team. That's what makes a warrior. That's what makes a SEAL. And that's what I saw in each of you, even when you couldn't see it in yourselves." The men stood a little straighter, and Sarah could see the pride and determination in their eyes. "Now," she said, breaking the emotional moment with a slight smile, "let's pack up and get out of here. We've got a long flight back to Virginia, and I'm buying the first round at Murphy's bar when we get home." Derek laughed. "Will you actually drink something stronger than ginger ale this time, ma'am?" "Don't push your luck, petty officer." 3 months later, Sarah sat in the same corner table at Murphy's bar. This time, she wasn't alone. Her entire team was there, celebrating the successful completion of their deployment and the official formation of Task Force Trident as a permanent unit. Derek raised his beer bottle. "A toast," he announced, and the rest of the team followed suit. "To Commander Mitchell, the toughest, smartest, and bravest co in the entire Navy, we're honored to serve under your command." "Hear, hear," the others shouted. Sarah raised her ginger ale, because some things never changed, and smiled at the men around her. They'd come such a long way from that first day on the obstacle course. They were no longer just a collection of individuals trying to prove themselves. They were a family. "And a toast to all of you," Sarah said, "for having the courage to grow, to change, and to become the warriors I always knew you could be. I'm proud to serve alongside each and every one of you." As the team drank and laughed and shared stories from their deployment, Sarah looked around the bar. It was the same place where, just a few months ago, she'd been told to get lost, sweetheart. The same place where she'd been mocked and dismissed. But everything had changed. She'd proven herself not through anger or revenge, but through competence, courage, and unwavering commitment to her team. She'd earned their respect not by demanding it, but by showing them what real leadership looked like. And in the end, that was worth more than any amount of vindication. The bartender, the same gray-haired man who'd watched the confrontation months ago, came over to their table. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said to Sarah. "I just wanted to say I remember you from before, and I'm sorry I didn't step in that night. I should have." Sarah waved off his concern. "It's all water under the bridge now." "Well, I want you to know, your money's no good here tonight. Everything's on the house. It's the least I can do for a real American hero." As the bartender walked away, Derek leaned over. "Ma'am, can I ask you something? That night at the bar, when we were being such jerks to you, did you know then that we'd be assigned to your unit?" Sarah took a sip of her ginger ale and smiled mysteriously. "I had a pretty good idea. And you still gave us a chance, even after how we treated you." "Everyone deserves a chance to be better than their worst moment," Sarah said. "I believe that. Besides, some of the best people I've ever known started out as the worst. They just needed someone to believe in them and give them a reason to change." Derek shook his head in amazement. "You're something else, Commander." "So I've been told, petty officer, so I've been told." Outside, the rain had started again, just like that night months ago. But inside Murphy's bar, surrounded by her team, Sarah Mitchell felt nothing but warmth and gratitude. She'd spent 15 years fighting for respect in a world that didn't always want to give it to her. She'd faced down enemies foreign and domestic. She'd earned every scar, every medal, every moment of recognition. But this, sitting here with her team, knowing they would follow her anywhere, knowing they respected her not because they had to, but because she'd earned it, this was the victory that mattered most.